Thank you all. I hope you had a wonderful lunch. We are really fortunate today to have the governor from New Hampshire, Christopher Sununu, who I just chatted with and discovered that he knew Barbara Bush. That in fact his father was the chief of staff in the George H.W. Bush White House, as some of you of my vintage would know. And the families got to know each other well enough. So yeah, that's a great experience to have had. I'm very envious of you, Governor. But that's not what he's here to talk about today. He's here to talk about the legislation that's seriously under consideration in New Hampshire, the Education Savings Account legislation that has been on the floor and is back in committee and may come out of committee. And also I'm going to let the governor speak about that and whatever else he wants to talk about. So thank you, Governor, for joining us.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to come down. I thought what I'd do is, I don't want to go on and on and on. I mean, I imagine some folks have questions about a variety of different things, but what I thought I would do is give just a little bit of background, kind of a little bit, really focus on the education. I think education is a great kind of marker, if you will, for a lot of the things that we're trying to drive in New Hampshire in a bigger sense. I've only been governor for 15, 16 months. 2017 was a great year. It really was. We got a lot done in New Hampshire. One of the biggest things we were trying to do is change the philosophy, right? The culture of what we do, the culture of government. I say it all the time. You know, you can't let the dysfunction of Washington, D.C. define the successes you have at a local level, especially up in New Hampshire. Call it 603 pride, right? Remind people what live free or die is. I mean, really. You know, up in New Hampshire, we live free or die is not 4 words on a license plate. It really is how we live, how we run our businesses, how we embrace our community, how we embrace that individual obligation, if you will, to reach out, help one another. We're very locally controlled. We don't believe in state control. We have a very small, very nimble state government. Some that haven't experienced it would think that we are lacking resources or not pushing forward on things that can be done because we rely on so much local control. Just the opposite. Our system allows us to embrace a lot of opportunity that a lot of other systems just don't, because we kind of champion the individual. That's a kind of a key point there in itself. One thing we're trying to really focus on is this idea that New Hampshire has great fundamentals, right? We have no sales tax, we have no income tax, we have one of the lowest property tax bases you're going to find. We're very locally controlled, but it's very easy to pour money into a system and call it a day. Take whatever you want. Take the developmentally disabled community. Take schools and education. We're putting more money here. We're putting more money there. Elected officials can put their thumb up and say, we did our job. We're good. No, that is a very old school way of thinking. And we're really trying to challenge ourselves, and we're really trying to challenge our fellow elected officials, whether in the House or the Senate, our commissioners, essentially our secretaries, in terms of how to simply do it better. Better customer service. I don't mean to just call everyone a customer, but essentially they are. When you're the governor of the state, the people of the state and the businesses are essentially like customers, right? And I guess for those of you who don't know my background, I was an engineer. I was an civil and environmental engineer from right down the road, little engineering school. And then I ended up, through a series of unlikely events, ended up running a ski resort. I owned and ran Waterville Valley Resort, and yes, it was snowing up north today. But kind of through that process, you know, as an engineer, I'm always a believer that you can make the system better. And something that the professor and I were talking about was the idea that times are good right now. I wish Charlie Baker were here because I could tell him how I have the fastest growing economy in the Northeast, and the fastest growing population in the Northeast, and we have the highest per capita income in the country is in New Hampshire. The lowest poverty rate in the country is New Hampshire. 2.6% unemployment. Times are good. Businesses are coming in left and right. We're drawing people in. We're doing things differently. We've had a lot of success over the past year. That is actually the right time to change the system. If you're willing to challenge yourself, try something new, experiment a little bit, and that's where New Hampshire's small and nimble government gives us a lot of opportunity to experiment. We don't let bureaucracy get in our way of good ideas. We can really focus on them. We can kind of beta test them in our local communities very efficiently and effectively. And something like what we're talking about today, school choice, what that means and what is of the possible, if you will. That's where I think we can really be the gold standard for a lot of other states in the country. I mean, our public schools are tremendous. I'm the first governor in 25 years to come up through the public schools in New Hampshire. Right? I believe in them very strongly. They're the foundation of our education system and have to be the foundation of quality education for decades, if not centuries to come. But at the same time, we have to provide opportunity. Government is not here to guarantee much. It is not. That's what we believe in New Hampshire. That's what I believe. But opportunity. Equal opportunity for everyone, regardless of income, regardless of zip code, regardless of race, religion, man, woman, old, young, doesn't matter. Opportunity. And then you let the individual, you get out of their way, you break down bureaucracy, you break down regulation, you get out of the way and you let the individual make their choices and drive forward. And that's where education has such an opportunity to be the standout issue that I think governors really need to take up in terms of setting a new standard, not thinking in short-term cycles. Politicians love to think to the next election. Can't do that. Anyone who's in business knows if you just think 2 years ahead or 4 years ahead, I get elected every 2 years, by the way. I'm not sorry for that. Always right. But if you think in short-term cycles all the time, you're never getting anywhere. You're just thinking to the next election. And when times are good, I go back to the central premise here, when times are good, that's when to adjust the system. That's when to challenge yourself. If you wait for the crisis to determine whether you want to do things differently, you're only reacting to the crisis, right? When times are good, that's when you tweak it. That's when you try new things, because you have a little bit of flexibility. Maybe you have a few more resources at the local or state level, whatever it might be. You have more people coming in, you have a robust economy. The economy drives the security of really all these different government programs that you want to push, especially education. Now's the time to challenge yourself. So we said we're going to take it head on education. So I'm a big believer. You want to think long term in anything we do? Kids. It's going to sound cliche. It's all about the kids, but it is. It's all about the kids. You want to address the opioid crisis, which we have both in Massachusetts and New Hampshire? You better focus on prevention. Treatment, recovery, and enforcement, those are critical. You got to put money in. You got to make sure you're taking care of folks and saving lives and giving them opportunities. But that will never win the war. The war is won with kids, making sure that drug dealers don't get to them or we get to the kids before the drug dealers do. Same thing in education. Focus on the kids. Focus on the opportunity early on. A little bit also on my background and why I get very passionate about education. My wife was a special ed teacher. She got her master's degree at Hugsy, right here at Harvard. That was a pretty interesting time. And a lot of what I've learned in terms of the importance of early childhood development, the importance of taking advantage of those early years really comes from her expertise, which is great. I believe in public schools, but at the same time, in our situation, for the first couple of years, we homeschooled. I mean, I've lived school choice. We homeschooled for 2 or 3 years. Then we sent our kids, I lived about a quarter mile from the local school, a town of 1,500, quintessential New England community, small little Newfields, New Hampshire. We sent our kids to the public school eventually. They could walk to school, it was great. It worked for the most part. And then when they were going to go to a much larger school, I knew it wasn't going to be the best thing for my son, so we tried a charter school. We got waitlisted. I guess that's a good sign. Charter school was full. It was a good charter school, but we got waitlisted, so we didn't get in. So we tried a small Catholic school a couple towns away, working very well. Right? It just works for us and for our needs. That worked for us. We had the means, we had the opportunity, and we're taking advantage of it. Not everyone has the opportunity that my family had. Not everyone has the opportunity to take advantage of resources or whatever it might be. So that's where the government, I think, has to step in. That's one of the main reasons I ran for governor. We were a business of 600, 700, 800 employees, and the government was coming down with regulations, bureaucracy, slowing us down. I was a dad. I was a dad with kids in public schools, and I wasn't liking everything I was seeing. For the most part, it worked, but for my kids, it didn't. And I just knew we could do better. And every time we tried to ask for a different program or ask for something different, it was, great idea, Chris, but can't do that. They won't let us. We all know who they are, right? Or you can guess. It's the administration, it's the union, it's the system. The system won't let anything change. It's very frustrating for a parent to hear. So I ran for governor. So first thing I really focused on, just to give you, again, another piece of background, which really I think defined everything that we've done since, frankly, was full-day kindergarten. New Hampshire was one of the only states that had not fully funded full-day kindergarten in their communities. Some local districts did it, if they had the means and they made that choice, they paid for it out of their 100% out of their pockets. The state was not getting involved on a full-day program. I said enough. Again, why should that kid in that zip code have it and that kid in that zip code not have it? So I put everything behind it, and they say this, for a Republican, is political suicide. No Democrat has ever even proposed that in New Hampshire. It'll never happen. We got it done. And by the way, we got it done and it didn't cost the taxpayers a single dollar, right? That wasn't my idea, but we got it done with Keynote. we legalized Keynote at the same time. The revenues were huge, and it's working. It's great. Wasn't my idea. I got to give someone else the credit for that, but it worked, right? So now we kind of took care of that. And what we did there by fighting so hard for that early is we set the tone. This is going to be about education, and this is going to be about kids. So when you talk about, let's get back to what is school choice, right? And you guys are the experts. I'm talking to the smartest of the smart. Who am I to? I'm not telling you what you hopefully don't already know. Folks out there that say school choice is public versus private school is thinking like it's 1995, right? That is 20th century thinking. It's not public versus private schools. School choice is about allowing the individual, the parent, the student, to design their pathway for success. I believe that very strongly. So school choice within the public school system is actually in some ways the most powerful choices we can provide. When my son goes to school and he's in the four walls of the classroom and he's spelling and math and social studies and whatever it is, here's some homework, go play your sport, have dinner, come back, we'll do it again tomorrow. All right? It's got to be bigger than that. That isn't very inspiring for a young person. I know, I was in middle school. You know, we were all there. And for a lot of kids it works just fine. But for some kids, it's a nightmare. They feel trapped, right? My son has dyslexia. Through the miracle of my wife, my son now reads better than I do. Can't write very well. Can't articulate very well when he puts his pen to paper. And so in a system that doesn't have any time to deal with that, it can be very constraining, right? He's a brilliant kid. So I'm living the pathway that I know a lot of parents are out there. As governor, one of the most important things we do is we listen to stories. I call it story time. It's very important. In fact, it's probably one of the most important things I believe a governor can and should do. Not enough of them do it. You spend time with the individual. So you go to a community, you don't just give a speech and walk away. You spend time with the families. What happened to your son? Did it work for your daughter? No? Okay, let's take some time. You tried this, that didn't work. You tried there, you hit a roadblock there. This worked, couldn't get funding there. Okay. When you walk through the stories of people's individual experiences, that as an elected official, as a leader, you can find the barriers, right? And then you can say, okay, there was a barrier here, here, and here for this family. So we're going to break down, we're going to create policies based on the story to break down those barriers, because if it's helping him and her, it's probably helping somebody else. And then you do it again, and you do it again. So when we sat with families in Manchester, Manchester's our largest city, 100,000 people, but it is our largest city. We have a lot of issues in that city, to be sure. Everything from opioids to abuse, mental health issues, everything, right, that you have in a typical city. So you sit with these families, and there was one that really stuck out, and I highlight this family, in Canarciones. They were wonderful. There was a student, this lovely woman, her son Angel. It was very similar to my son's. So I found a connection there. And he was just going crazy. It wasn't working for him. He was frustrated. He hated school. Every day he woke up, he didn't want to go. Now, through a variety of programs, one being the tax scholarship program that we had up there that allowed tax credits. Businesses could invest in tax credits. They get the credit back. And it was a small program, a few $100,000. They were able to take advantage of that, and he got on a better path. She had an option. She had an opportunity, a door that was not open to her. And her son thrived just because he was able to get out. It wasn't necessarily the school was a bad school or the teachers were bad teachers. That is not what it is about, but it wasn't right for him. So this one student was able to open a door. He's graduating with honors and he's going on to the military. Something they never even thought possible, right? The pathway we know that he was on was destined for a very different future. And we were able to open that one door for that one individual. School, that's what school choice is. Allowing these doors to open. For some, it's opening doors within the public school. For some, it's allowing them to have other options. Now in New Hampshire, we can be very rural. We have southeast part of New Hampshire, Rockingham, Manchester. There are options. There's small Catholic schools, there's private schools. You get up into COAS or Carroll or Grafton, whatever it is, there's not as many options, right? So we've created these, we came up with the next idea, okay, well let's do ESAs, Education Savings Accounts, which I think you all know what they are. I don't know what your numbers are like, but in New Hampshire it's basically, I'm gonna round here, approximately $15,000 per student, a third of which comes from the state, 2/3 of which are in the town. So our ESA says the state money you can now use, you the individual. We're not funding religious schools, we're funding parents. That's the difference. We're focusing on the individual, not the institution, and they'll have options. Now we've had to pare back what we wanted to do. We had to find compromise and agreement. Right now it sits at about, for folks that are at 185% of the federal poverty level, roughly the folks on free and reduced lunch. We've capped the number of students that can come out of any single school district, so no one gets too financially hurt by it. You know, one of the things we're trying to do is just get the ball rolling, and then we'll be able to see the real data. Like we have an assumption of, and some guesses as to how this is going to turn out. I think they're pretty accurate, frankly. But when you're able to get that data in a small state like New Hampshire and then tweak the system again, that's how you really start making it very efficient, much more robust. And maybe there's some things we've designed in there that aren't perfect. As an engineer, you have to learn that you can always make it better. But the only way we're going to know is to get the ball rolling. It's sitting in committee right now. It's about a 13-13 vote. It'll go back to the House floor. It'll be tight. It'll be tight. And with a 400-member volunteer legislature, a lot of times it's who shows up to vote, right? Sorry, I was at work that day, Governor. Couldn't make the vote. No, you got to get down here, right? And I make a joke all the time. God bless it. I have a few of my staff here today. I joke to Charlie. Charlie has like 3 times the staff I do. I have one of the smallest governor's staff in the country. I'm managing 400 legislators, right? Charlie, I don't know, how many do they have here? 200. 200. He's got 3 times the staff to manage half the number of legislators. Something's wrong. But God bless it. So in terms of whipping the vote, you know, getting folks down there, making sure they vote, we get very involved on the House side. We really do. We're on the phones. We're banging away. I make a lot of personal calls myself. That's just the way we do it here. And that's fine. All right, if you believe in something, that's where you need to go. So we're very close. It'll be a very tight vote. Watch the news over the next couple weeks. Hopefully we get there. If we don't, are we going to let the issue go away? Of course not. As I was saying out here, you guys had the charter school referendum. That's we don't have referendums up in New Hampshire. We don't do it like that. We have so much power in the legislature for the individual because we have 400 members. We just don't do referendums. So you had the referendum here. You put a lot of money behind it. It didn't work. One thing I was shocked about, we were talking about in the hall a little bit, is then the conversation kind of went away. Can't let that happen. You cannot let that happen. You put a lot of money into these referendums. You almost get there. It falls short. If you stop talking about it, if you stop fighting for it and keeping it as part of the narrative, you're back to zero again. So the next time you want to start, you're going to start from square zero. You can't let that happen. Keep the narrative going. Keep the conversation going. This is what this is all about. Do not let this conversation happen in the 4 walls of the Kennedy School today. You got to take what you have here and drive the data out. What works? What doesn't work? Be honest about it too. Hey, this program was tried over here, it didn't work. This program was tried over here, we got great outcomes and results. Those are the stories that folks need to see and folks need to hear about. And over time, you can build more momentum. I get very frustrated when I see people not win on something and then they just give up and they walk away as if it's done. We'll get back to it in a couple of years. No. You got to keep fighting for it. You got to keep talking about it, keep experimenting with it. That is the power in making sure that when you start next time, you're already ahead of the game. There's a bunch of other things we've really done that I believe are very strongly in terms of what school choice is. For example, we've invested in our career schools, our technical schools. We used to call them voc schools, right? And as a lot of you know, technical schools aren't just plumbing and electricians, although boy, we need a lot of those, right? It is computer coding, it is veterinary services, it is nursing, it is childcare, it is all these critical jobs that are out there. And you know, I make a joke, my buddy Earl, he's been my plumber. Plumber named Earl, so scary, right? He's been my plumber for years. And look, I don't know about you, but he's always on vacation. He owns his own business. He'll never want for another job in his life, right? It's an amazing career. And the reason that we are having a problem right now filling those jobs, it's our fault as parents. We talk like being a plumber or being an electrician or a carpenter is something not worthy. Let me tell you, those are not just high-paying jobs. Those are careers. And the stigma that our culture has kind of put around those opportunities for kids, is terrible, right? I'd love it if my son became a great electrician. That'd be awesome. Because again, you could take someone that's, these kids, you know, what's his name? I won't use the right name, we'll call him Joe Smith. Joe, I met recently, he's 26, he's an electrician. At 16, he was about to drop out, and I only met him through his former guidance counselor, who came and met me and said, I need to introduce you to this guy. He was about 16, he was about to drop out of school. She said, no. She said, she got him to stay, and she put him over into the Seacoast School of Technology, which is a career school over on the Seacoast. And he started becoming an apprentice, an electrician's apprentice, I guess. And within 2 years, he got his apprenticeship, and then he went to become a journeyman or whatever it is, and he got licensed for that. Look, by the time he was 20, he never went to college. He liked what he did. By the time he was 22, he was starting his own business. He's 26, he has 16 employees. He owns his own business. This kid was that close to dropping out of school before someone showed him that there was another door, another opportunity, another choice. That is what school choice really is all about. Now, for some people, these public schools just don't work. We talked about that. You got to allow that opportunity to flourish, and you got to allow everyone to have that opportunity. Some will take it, some won't. That's their choice. I don't believe the government should be mandating a whole lot of that. Let individuals just define that. Let the public dollars come to that individual and let them drive forward. So we invested in those career schools. We put about $25 million into a couple of our career schools in the state and really brought them up to speed. You know, automotive, right? Manufacturing. Manufacturing is not pulling a drill press. And I encourage you, if you have not been in a real manufacturing facility, any of you, in the past year, go in. See what they're doing. Right? It is amazing stuff. And they're all around us. You won't even know it. Right? It is not the old school shop, so to say. There's incredible opportunities. BAE Systems, a defense manufacturer in New Hampshire. Average salary at BAE is $104,000. They have 200 job openings today. Don't tell me manufacturing isn't an awesome career path for a lot of folks out there. We're going to Canada. I spent a lot of time outside of the state trying to drive business in. I spent a lot of time in Massachusetts, by the way. I do. I come down and we're drawing them in left and right. We're making a lot of progress with that, which is great. No governor had gone to Canada from New Hampshire in 10 years. I thought that was crazy because they're our #1 trading partner. So we went up there and we started bringing companies down because they want to be here. Well, where does a manufacturer in Canada want to be? Northern New Hampshire, where they said manufacturing was dead, where they said all the manufacturing programs in our community colleges weren't worth anything anymore. We're making huge headway. By allowing and driving the business and the economic opportunities, that allows the choice and the opportunities in education to meet. Don't wait till they're 18 to say, now what do you want to do with your life? Talk to them at 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Create programs that allow them to find that path. First Robotics. Huge believer in First Robotics, founded by Dean Kamen up in Manchester, New Hampshire. First Robotics, there's 25,000 or something, 50,000 I think, First Robotics teams around the world right now. What is First Robotics? First Robotics is basically an after-school program where kids get together with STEM, learn about the initiatives of STEM, all the way back in elementary school. They have Lego League first, they have middle school first, they have high school first programs. They learn about communication, problem solving, professionalism. It is not about, first is not about the robots, the kids don't build the robots. The robots build the kids. That's what this is about. That's a choice. That's an option that kid now has. We put nearly $1 million into that program. State had never put $1 into it. I put $1 million into it. We tripled the number of schools that had that program in New Hampshire. Hugely successful. And over time, that becomes really a private partnership. Corporations are investing dollars. Here's the other issue you have to really focus on. You have major businesses out there. In New Hampshire, it might be BAE or Eversource or whatever it might be. They're investing real private dollars into school programming today because they're trying to build the workforce for tomorrow that they don't have right now. Everyone's got job openings, right? So go to those private partnerships. Let the businesses invest in those programs and give them the flexibility to create a program that might work for them, that might work within their realm. When you do that, amazing things open up. So, I could go on, but these are some of the fun. This is just the first year. Imagine if I get elected again, right? There's always opportunity for tomorrow. So we're fighting hard today to we've built a really strong narrative that education has to be first and foremost. True options, true opportunities for the individual. It's not just about the ESAs. ESAs are huge. That'll be the biggest school choice initiative the school has ever taken on, but still just a big puzzle piece in the grand scheme of the puzzle. And you have to keep your eyes open for the next piece of the puzzle. It's not always a fight. It doesn't have to be a fight between us versus them. It doesn't have to be. When you build that narrative, eventually you get other folks on your side. Folks that aren't even paying attention to this discussion today very well may be paying attention to it tomorrow. And then they become advocates for you. Not all advocates need to be paid professionals, banging on the doors of the legislature. The strongest advocates are the ones working door to door, house to house, community to community, coworker to coworker, family member to family member. Those are the real advocates. Those are the ones that have the most power. Find your local advocates in your communities. Ground up. We call it retail politics in New Hampshire. It really, really works. It's an amazingly powerful thing when you do that. So I think that's where, again, if you lose the fight today, it's frustrating. I get it. I've lost a few. Not many. But I've lost a few fights in my time politically. That's all right. You've made a point. First, you've showed where you stood, what's important to you. Hopefully you've showed where the state needs to go. Because you don't agree on exactly how to get there, doesn't mean you've shown everyone a light at the end of the tunnel. Hope, opportunity. Okay, how do we get there? Governor, we might not agree how to get there, but you know what, it's hard to disagree that that's not a viable goal. And don't make it so high that you can't achieve it. Don't design a school choice program that's so grandiose and outrageous it'll just never happen and then complain it didn't get done. Crack in the door. Cracking the door open is critical with a lot of these programs. And then grow them, tweak them, fix them, design them to be better in the long run. That's just the best way it works, and then it works organically. I was number 7 of 8 kids, so in case if I ever stopped talking, nobody paid attention to me for like months. So I tend to go on a little bit. I guess I can wrap it up. I can go away quietly. We can take questions. I mean, I think that the big takeaway is New Hampshire is a great fertile ground for experimentation because we break down bureaucracy, because we're nimble, because local control can be difficult. There's no doubt about that. But that also means you have communities with a lot of control over their system. You have 3 or 4 or 5 of them that really believe in what you're doing. They'll embrace it. I'm looking at DJ, the bill we passed last year. Sorry, I almost said Claremont, not Claremont. Croydon. Sorry, small town of Croydon, the village, literally a village in our state, became ground zero for a battle of school choice because the school went to the 4th grade, and then they usually went on to another school, and the local school system said no, the parents can use their money and they can go to another school, the Montessori school, if they want. And the state attorney general said no, you don't, under the previous administration. And this tiny little hamlet became the first real battleground for us in school choice. When I became governor, we won. We changed the law and we allowed them that door to open and said, you guys can decide where you want to go. Certain districts, that were really small, that didn't have other options, they could use those dollars in other ways. It was limited to a few districts. But the reason I bring that up is because that's an example of we had the battle at the local level. We cracked that door open. Without that, we might not even be talking about education savings accounts today. Find the small wins, the local wins. They can grow into really big things. They really can, and they can be very positive to keep you alive and ready and prepared and more data-driven for the next fight. Hopefully it's not a fight. It's just a pleasant argument with slight disagreement that you win. So again, with that, I can go away. We can take questions, whatever you like. I don't even know. Did I talk about the right stuff? I don't know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yes, sir.
I want to thank you, David.
Sure.
I want to make sure I get this right. You also have a competency pilot there, right? Like
PACE.
Yeah. Can you talk about that?
Look, we're on the forefront of competency-based education. It's very exciting. We have a couple districts where we call it a PACE education. I'm going to kill myself because I don't remember exactly what PACE stands for, but we're. I know. He's looking it up on Google. No, we're really designing systems to not just say, okay, here's the test, take the test, and we'll just tell you if you're good enough, right? Again, that's old school thinking. Fill in the bubble. I'm all for standardized tests, by the way, but that's fine. But don't overdo it. I mean, one of the things that got me so frustrated as a dad, my son, who was a bit dyslexic, had a hard time with a traditional test-taking mode, and even a harder time doing it on Common Core computers. It's just wasn't his thing. They would practice. I mean, I was living the cliche, if you will, of my kid coming home being like, we practiced for the test for 2 hours again today. And again, 2 hours a day for 4 straight weeks, my son was in his school practicing for a bubble test for Common Core. That's the pressure that the administration put on that test. And the teacher said that my son's teacher was the head of the union in the school. And she said, it drives us crazy, Governor. I wasn't governor at the time, I was Chris. God drives us crazy, Chris. We get it. But there's a lot of pressure on us. This is what they expect us to do, so we're doing it. That's wrong, right? So we have really designed a system, even before I became governor, that allows for project-based learning, competency learning, giving the teachers a little more flexibility in creating an assessment that can truly determine whether the student is competent in a specific subject or not. And again, I can't stand Common Core. I hope that's not a secret to anybody. I think it's terrible. Just the message it sends to a student that your success is determined on this bubble sheet. That has nothing to do with was there anything educational about my son practicing for a test 2 hours a day? I mean, literally zero. There's nothing educational other than learning how to practice for a test, which isn't real education, right? There's nothing that student can then hold on to build on for the future. It's a colossal waste of time and money, by the way. So that's where we've tried it in a couple pilot programs there. It's expanded this year, and hopefully we'll keep expanding it. Now, you gotta be careful. You can't make it so project-based that it becomes wishy-washy. The student went out and washed a car, and we think he has real workforce-ready skills, therefore he has passed the test. No. You gotta have some standards around it, of course, but you can build some flexibility, so you're allowing the student to use their inspiration, right? What excites them, and let them design a project based on what they want to focus on. Again, I go back to, for me, it's all about workforce. Right? We're trying to build a workforce, you build opportunity in education so they have opportunity when they graduate. And if you start talking about what do you want to do with your life at 18, you got to get them at 13, 14, 15 years old when you get them excited about something. Get them integrated into the community colleges. A workforce, they should all have workforce. A diploma is not good enough. I hope I'm not telling anybody they don't know. A diploma is a piece of paper. Okay, we have some of the highest graduation rates in the country. More kids out of New Hampshire have a diploma than almost anywhere else. If they don't have workforce-ready skills on day one, what's the point, right? And this idea that, we talk about it a lot, but people still live, well, it's either college or no college. Your success after high school is, the smart kids go to college and the other ones don't. Again, what year are we living in? I created a program this year called the Governor's Scholarship. I wanted to call it the Governor's Sununu Scholarship, but my staff won't let me do that. I'll tell you a quick story. I'm elected governor. In December after I'm elected, but before I'm inaugurated, I'm sitting with the university, the chancellor of the university system in New Hampshire. He said, Governor, we need to focus on workforce. I said, yes, we do. He said, we have an idea. Great, what do you think? He said, I think we should give us $5 million, and we'll create a full ride scholarship for all 46, because we have 46 public high schools in the state, all 46 valedictorians in the state of New Hampshire. They'll get a full ride to the university system. We will retain the best and the brightest in New Hampshire. I said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. They're valedictorians. They probably got a full ride almost wherever they want to go. I don't need 46 students. I need 1,000 students. So I went home. I said, let me get back to you. And I realized, oh God, this is what it's going to be like being governor, having conversations like this. But I said, no, this is great. So I went back home. I'd say this a lot, but I swear I do my best thinking in the shower. I was literally in the shower, and I'm doing the math in my head. Thank you, MIT. And I went, I got it. So I called him in the next day. I said, I'm going to one-up you. I'm going to take that $5 million and I'm going to give it to 1,000 kids a year. I said, well, that doesn't make sense. The math doesn't work. I said, sure it does. Because I'm going to give it to the kids. I'm not going to give it to the institution, right? So we got the governor's scholarship passed, and what does it do? $2,000 per year. It doesn't sound like a lot. But if you're deciding whether to go to a community college for $6,000, guess what? You can use it there. If you want to go to a private school who's already offered you a scholarship and a small loan, you can use it there. You can use it anywhere you want it. It can be public, it can be private, it can be community college. You can now use that $2,000 to go train to be a phlebotomist at the American Red Cross, if that's what your path says that you want to do. And you do it in New Hampshire, and that's how you retain workforce. And when you do the math, up to 1,000 kids this year will have the opportunity for these scholarships. And if you do go to a 4-year school, if you do go to UNH, great. There'll be $2,000 per year waiting for you for every year that you're there. It does, for the Democrats, I know that sounds like crumbs, Nancy Pelosi. But $2,000 is a lot of money. And that can be the catalyst sometimes to allow a student to make a choice that they want to make. and not have to say, well, I can't make it to that institution because it's too expensive, or whatever it might be. So again, and who fought it? The ACLU. The ACLU fought this thing at the last minute. The last vote it needed, it was through this thing called the Executive Council, which I was a member of. I won't bore you with the details of that. But the Democrats stood up and said, the ACLU wrote me a letter last night and said that you might be giving public tax dollars to religious schools. St. A's, great 4-year college. You can't do that. Well, sure I can. They're Pell eligible. Tax dollars give scholarships to that all the time. And by the way, I'm not giving it to St. A's. I'm giving it to the student. I'm giving it to the individual, and they get to decide where they want to use it. That's the power of these programs, and that's how you design a workforce for the future. That's how you get an 18-year-old kid to maybe try something new, open a door, and create an opportunity that they otherwise wouldn't have. UNH didn't love the idea, needless to say. They wanted $5 million, right? It was just a big subsidy for UNH. I get it. But that's old school thinking. We got to keep challenging ourselves to get this kind of stuff done, not just in New Hampshire or Massachusetts, but all across the country. And it happens with narrative. You got to keep building that narrative. Sorry, I tend to talk too much. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So thank you for being here. You mentioned something when you were talking about the education savings account as being a small program with the opportunity to get some data and learn from it what would be tweaked to make the case for it going forward. What data do you have in mind, both to sort of inform your thinking and for the purpose of the public narrative? So are you thinking about test scores, or are you thinking about something else? If so, what? Individual stories?
Yeah, look, test scores are fine, but test scores will tell you how the individual schools are doing, and that's important. But the data I'm looking for is what communities took advantage of this. What are the demographics of the families that took advantage of this? And then you can go back to those families and say, what other opportunities did you have? Was a door closed to you before that is now open? Literally, how far are you traveling to go to that school? You're up in Grafton County and you took advantage of this? Where did you go? Like, I want to know. Was it more homeschoolers versus charter private schools? Whatever it might be. Did more schools spring up? Did we create opportunity for people to invest and make outside investments to create new schools and new opportunities because of this? So I want to more see how the system moves a little bit and what the impacts are. How much did the scare tactics that the administrators and the unions are trying to use that say, oh, you're going to financially devastate these school districts, have those played out? No, they won't. But, confirm that you guys are fine. I got a letter from my hometown of Salem, New Hampshire. And the superintendent there is a really nice guy. And he sent a letter, and he said, in the letter it said, Governor, we really think you should reconsider ESAs. If you do this, it could cost our school district $120,000. The school budget's about $66 million. Really? Really? We're gonna prevent opportunity for some of these kids where the system just isn't working over a fraction of a percent of the budget? I'm not saying it's not gonna cost you anything. And by the way, you get to keep $10,000 for every student you no longer have to teach. Your dollars per pupil actually just went up. Hello? Right? So using this data to then say, we can make the program more robust. Or this, we allowed people to use it for tutoring and nobody took advantage of that. Or we allowed people to use it for this and maybe there was fraud. Who knows what, let's be honest about the dynamics of how it really worked, and we'll tweak it again. Hopefully make it more robust. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that tweaked another question. Can you say more about the role of technology, online learning, and that sort of thing with the ESA, and whether you're looking at that? Online
learning is tremendous, especially for elementary and middle school kids. High schoolers as well. It's a whole different world when you obviously get into higher education. Southern New Hampshire University is one of the biggest online schools in the country, frankly. They make a lot of money, frankly, and they do very well with it. That's great. But when you're talking about kids, I believe that there is a lot of opportunity there. You got to be careful that you don't just do sole online learning, though, right? You got to have some hands-on experience. You got to hopefully drive programs that are getting better outcomes. Online learning can be fleeting if it is not supported with some hands-on stuff. For example, you can do online learning about science, but unless you're really mixing a couple chemicals together, unless you're really going to the Museum of Science and seeing these amazing phenomena occur, or looking under a microscope, that's how it really gets tangible and takes a hold in a student, and I think provides a real education that they can build on, an experience they can build on. So I love that it's possible through this program, But I'm just a big believer that you have to be cautious of it as well to make sure there's substance behind what that is. Otherwise, we're clicking. I mean, for those of you guys take an online class, you read, you click, you read, you click, you answer a couple questions here. Oh, got that one wrong. I'll go back. Oh, that's great. Gives you kind of a foundational knowledge of what you're doing. And maybe it's the engineer in me. I'm very hands-on. I think you got to get out there. You got to have these experiences and not just stuck in the four walls of the classroom. Can be just as much of a trap as the four barriers of bevels of a computer screen, right? And I think we all do that too much, especially in education. I love that my kids now use a MacBook. Sorry, did I say MacBook? Now I'm the ancient one. iPads. But using an iPad or using a device, those are great. But I think we can all agree, you do that too much, you're in trouble. How many sixth graders can do a nice handwritten letter to their grandmother? Right? There's a tremendous value in that. That isn't nostalgia. That's quality communication. You know how many handwritten notes I write as governor? I do it all the time. I'm not gonna lie to you, I do it in block lettering because I'm an engineer, right? But to my own fault, I wish I had the penmanship my father had. And I'm the youngest governor in the country, although my hair is falling out in droves, but the value of being able to do that is tremendous. And so I'm just using that as one example. You gotta be hands-on, you gotta learn to communicate, you gotta learn to capitalize your letters and complete your sentences. People think that's old school thinking. It is the backbone of quality communication and professional communication to really give them, that's a workforce skill in my mind.
More question. Yeah. So just to follow up on that question, I guess you mentioned some maybe limits and downsides to some of the options that are out there. So where do you see maybe some kind of oversight on that? Who plays the role there? Is it your office, some independent body, parents? Like
a good Department of Education, a good Board of Education. In New Hampshire, I think I don't know if it's the same here. I met one of the board members here. Board of Education is a very powerful group in New Hampshire. I just put another board member on, 4-3. That's all I'm saying. Take that for what it is. And having we have a great commissioner who really believes in education. Our commissioner of education homeschooled his kids. People say, how are you going to have the commissioner of public schools homeschooling his kids? Absolutely. Because he believes in public schools, but he also has really researched, understands at a very finite level and a very hands-on level what options, what choices are out there, right? So he's open to the concepts. He's open to the ideas of what might be possible. But you have to trust, and not in the bureaucracy, but in the leadership within those groups to, again, create the framework to have accountability. You're spot on. You can't just let the system run wild. You have to have accountability in the system. Otherwise, you're doing a massive disservice to these kids. If you're not getting better outcomes, what's the point of doing any of this, right? We're just throwing money at the problem at an institution or whatever it is. You get a good headline, you get reelected. That's not government. That's not good public service. It's just not. So creating accountability, metrics in the system that you have to live by, that always has to be part of the deal, whether it's part of the bill or part of the rules, whatever it is. But everything you do has to have metrics, accountability, and outcomes. Thank you guys very much. We're really appreciate that.